We begin in Mozambique, where the 15-country Southern Africa Development Community on Saturday called on Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe to delay elections scheduled for 31st July. A top Zimbabwean court had ruled that elections must take place before that date, despite concerns that there's not enough time to enact reforms that would ensure the polls are free and fair. Well, Mugabe's decision to press ahead with the election has plunged Zimbabwe into a political crisis. CCTV's Julie Shire reports.
As leaders from the Southern African Development Community were warmly greeted to the drumbeat of Mozambican dancers, the day's agenda was anything but festive for the heads of state. Southern African leaders were tasked once again with pulling Zimbabwe back from the political abyss amid uncertainty over the upcoming general election. Zimbabwean Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai arrived at the summit determined to challenge SADC to ensure that the country's elections are free and above reproach. A tough meeting that raises the question if SADC, as a regional bloc, is able to enforce democratic principles and help the unsettled power-sharing government between Robert Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai.
We are hoping that SADC can be able to stand on the grounds that it has been standing pretty much for the last 4 years, demanding a credible election in Zimbabwe that is free and fair. The only way that that can be done is through following through on agreements that have been made here at SADC, following through and ensuring that the next election abides by SADC's own standards.
Several questions still remain to be answered after this extraordinary meeting here in Maputo. Questions such as where will the $132 million funding come for these next elections, and will these elections be free, fair and non-violent? Julie Shire, CCTV News in Maputo, Mozambique.
Now to Libya, where 6 soldiers have been killed in clashes between Libyan special forces and armed protesters outside a special force base in the city on Saturday. It's not the first attack in Benghazi by armed groups. On Friday, a group of protesters attacked an army checkpoint in the eastern city of Benghazi and burned several army vehicles. There were no reports of injuries last week, or rather last week at least 31 people were killed and 100 injured in clashes between armed protesters demanding the disbanding of independent militias. Tensions have been rising between militias and the government, which is still struggling to assert its authority. The interim leader of Libya's army has consequently warned of a bloodbath as unrest in the city continues to flare up. A checkpoint commander describes Friday's attack on an army.
There
were no problems at the checkpoint. We didn't bother anyone. Then we heard people shouting no to federalism. We then reported to the operation room and told them that there was a riot and what they were calling for. They ordered us to fall back, and so we got into our vehicles. Then there was a sort of backlash on us. It wasn't just about federalism. There was a riot and they attacked the vehicles.
Somali police have seized a truck full of explosives from Al-Shabaab suspects. Hundreds of rusty detonators that were supposedly meant to be used for a series of attacks within the capital have now been taken. Police say they stopped the truck after a security operation. Police Commissioner General Abdullahi Dahir says police acted on tip-offs from the public and are investigating further.
We have been acting on tip-offs from the public, and we're still investigating further. I call on the public to continue working closely with the police. We really appreciate what the public have been doing, and we say continue helping us to protect you.
6 African leaders under the regional economic grouping, the Economic Community for Central Africa, have concluded their discussions in the Gabonese capital, Libreville, with 2 major policy commitments announced. Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Republic of Congo and the hosts, Gabon, have agreed to have visa-free travel in SADC member states. The abolishment of visa requirements for all citizens of SADC is expected to be implemented by 1st January 2014. The heads of state and government have also resolved to put in place new measures to support the pharmaceutical industry in the regional bloc. The SADC summit has been taking place in Libreville alongside the New York Forum, where over 1,000 business and political leaders have been in attendance. Now, investing in Africa and creating a framework for investment conducive for African development is a key focus of the Pan-African Investment Conference in Gabon. Participants have noted that Africa's economic future is greatly tied to China and are looking for ways to enhance engagement with their eastern partner. CCTV's Beatrice Marshall spoke to Olusegun Obasanjo on Africa's growing partnership with China.
I believe that I was the first, or one of the first, if not the first, as an African leader who established strategic partnership with China very early in the 21st century. And what are we saying? We are saying, yes, whatever you want that we have, let it be of mutual advantage. We want something. And what do we want? We want to be able to have reasonable revenue from our resources. If you want our resources, we need that our laws and rules must be respected. We want infrastructure, and if you can give us that, yes, and we will pay for it either directly or we take loan at reasonable interest rate and we pay as and when due. Now, this is what we want, and this is what we should get. And then we say, all right, when we do this, it's for mutual benefit. What does China want from us? China wants certain of our commodities to enhance their own development and keep it going. And we should make it available. In fact, the competition between China wanting our part of natural resources and other resources, and the West wanting it, is good for us.
Well, it's time now for a quick break when Africa Live returns. 37 years on, we revisit the Soweto uprising and what's changed for the African child today. And an 18-year-old is crowned Côte d'Ivoire Beauty Queen.
Breaking news. Global trends. CCTV News brings you stories with the different aspects of Africa in the international content. With our reporters across Africa and all over the world, we'll tell you about the real Africa and how it impacts the world. Africa Live, every day, only on CCTV News.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Now, South Africa is set to commemorate the 37th anniversary of the 1976 Soweto uprising, a turning point in South Africa's struggle for political freedom. Now, for the latest, let's cross to our correspondent, Guy Henderson, who is standing by in Pretoria. Guy, looking at today's celebrations, today marks the 37th commemoration of South Africa's 1976 Soweto youth uprising. And just for the benefit of our viewers, South Africa continues to commemorate a day where dozens of school children were killed by apartheid police for demonstrating against the use of the Afrikaans language as a medium of instruction at schools. Can you tell us a bit about how South Africans plan to celebrate the day, or rather commemorate what happened 37 years ago?
Yes, well, on this day in 1976, June the 16th, More than 10,000 children marched through the streets of Soweto in protest, as you say. Police opened fire on the crowds, and over the course of several days, more than 100 people, many of them school children, died as a result. Now, that protest was crushed by the authorities at the time, but it did come to mark a new wave of resistance against white rule, led by a younger generation of young leaders. Now, in terms of what's happening today to commemorate that day, well, firstly, Jacob Zuma will be making a speech in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, really to address some of the themes that the youth of today face. So, according to an ANC statement released on this on Saturday, he'll be talking about some of the challenges such as unemployment, high levels of inequality, that kind of thing. And then in Soweto itself, school children will again be walking through the streets of Soweto to a memorial called the Hector Peterson Memorial, which is a memorial of a young boy who was, in the early hours of that protest back in 1976, shot dead by police and has become a symbol of that tragic day. Now, youth is, of course, a theme which sits particularly close to Nelson Mandela's heart. It was a theme which he spent a great deal of his time focusing on after he stepped down from the presidency back in 1999, mostly through the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And it was, of course, Nelson Mandela himself as a young man who, back in the 1950s, through a group that became known as the Young Radicals, effectively, along with Walter Sisulu and others, took over the leadership of the ANC and brought about this new era of stiffer resistance against white rule. So Youth Day really is about the power of youth, about the important role it's played in this country's history, and of course the important role it can continue to play going forward.
Now, Guy, you're still on standby outside former President Nelson Mandela's hospital, where he's being treated for a recurring lung infection. Now, we've heard so far, according to his grandson, that the former president is recovering well. That's after he was admitted to hospital last Saturday. Now, what more do we know about his current condition? Is there any chance he could be going home soon?
I think that's probably a little bit premature. Remember, back in December, he spent 18 days in hospital, and then in March, 9 days. And I think there is a feeling that he has been at least as sick and as ill, if not very probably more ill than on those previous occasions. So I think we do probably have to expect several more days at least in hospital for him. From what we can glean from the small bits of information we've had over the last few days, back since Wednesday, when Jacob Zuma, after a few worrying days, finally felt confident enough through the information he was being given by doctors at the time to report that for the first time Nelson Mandela was beginning to respond to treatment. Two comments yesterday, on Saturday, as you say, from his grandson Mandla Mandela, who said that not only was he responding to treatment, but that he was beginning to recover well, and was even managing a smile. So I think sure but slow progress in terms of his improving health.
All right, thanks very much, Guy Henderson there live in Pretoria with an update on the condition of former President Nelson Mandela, as well as looking at South Africa's commemoration around Youth Day. Now, as the continent marks Day of the African Child, NGOs in the Democratic Republic of Congo are calling for urgent action, as an alarming number of children in the east of the country are turning their backs on school. Now, as Clementine Logan reports, they're instead working in mines.
This is a low-tech coltan mine near Rubeya in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Among its workforce are many children, some under the age of 10. According to the World Bank, some 40% of the 2 million people working in DRC's makeshift mines are children. Some claim the problem's due to a lack of education, leaving them little choice in their fight to survive.
I don't study, my job is to dig for minerals.
Failure to invest in schools and education has also forced some out of the teaching profession. Now some local NGOs are calling for action.
It's a deplorable situation that needs some analysis and solutions to be found. Children should not be working in mines, they should be at school. Unfortunately, there aren't schools in this zone, and the ones that there are in an advanced state of decay. The solution is to build schools and improve teachers' salaries, so the children leave the quarries and go to school.
Coltan is used in most electronic devices, from mobile phones to jet engines, and demand is soaring. Children here use their bare hands to sift through dirt for the mineral. According to child protection charities, this work poses serious risks to their long-term health.
Children who are exposed to working in hazardous conditions will sort of acquire quite serious medical conditions as a result, sort of asthma, sort of respiratory problems. The fact that they are likely not to have easy access to medical care can also compound that.
Under the Congolese Labour Code, it's illegal to employ children in the mining sector. But in Rubeya, there appears to be a culture of denial.
You can witness it. You can visit the mines. There are no children at this mine.
Up to 90% of mining activity in DRC is low-skilled and artisanal. And until long-term solutions are found, many more children will find themselves digging for coltan and other minerals rather than studying at school. Clementine Logan, CCTV.
Under the theme, Eliminating Harmful Social and Cultural Practices Affecting Children, Our Collective Responsibility, the African Union and partners celebrated the 23rd Day of the African Child in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. DAC 2013 aims to draw attention to harmful social and cultural practices against children. It also hopes to highlight the roles and responsibilities of various stakeholders. But as CCTV's Robert Nagila reports, despite some successes, the continent still has a long way to go.
37 years ago on this day, thousands of black children in Soweto marched in a column more than a kilometer long. They were protesting the poor quality of education black children received under the apartheid system. What followed shocked the entire world. Hundreds of children were shot and killed by police in protests that continued for 2 weeks. And as the day honors those who participated in the Soweto uprising, it also raises awareness of the continuing need for improvement of the education and welfare of African children. New statistics published by UNESCO say Nigeria has the greatest number of children out of school, about 59 million in total. But while the figures may be alarming, it's not all doom and gloom across the African continent. Countries like Ghana, Rwanda, Malawi, Ethiopia, Uganda and Tanzania are on target to achieving multiple targets in the Millennium Development Goals to reduce child mortality, eradicate poverty and hunger, and achieve universal primary education for all by 2015. But perhaps the biggest hurdle faced by children is conflict. In the Central African Republic, about 2 million children have been directly affected by the recent fighting. The African Union says, while law reform and child-friendly policies are important, they're insufficient on their own in guaranteeing the safety of children. The organization says protecting children from all forms of violence is an imperative of human rights. Robert Nagila, CCTV, Nairobi.
Now, as we continue to look at Day of the African Child, we move to West Africa for an inspiring story on what children can achieve. There we find Onafujiri Remet, also known as Fuji. He's a professional photographer with over 3,000 photographs to his credit. But here's what's surprising. Fuji is only 3 years old. An exhibition showcasing his work is taking place this week in Lagos. CCTV's Maria Galang has the rest of that story.
Seeing the world through a child's perspective. Fuji's photography exhibition is taking place at the Terra Culture in Victoria Island, Lagos. This exhibition will display more than 3,000 photos the 3-year-old has captured since beginning his hobby not so long ago.
Surprised to see the works on the wall did not even show or give an indication that this is done by a 3-year-old boy. But if you look at all the works, you will see definitely that he did them. But it's just amazing that he's so talented that he could do this.
While most children his age are more concerned with their toys, Fuji has already embarked on his mission to be a professional photographer. His work has remarkably gained praise from a wide audience who marvel at his talent.
Fuji's work, beautiful pictures is taken
Awesome. I'm inspired. Unbelievable. I really didn't think a young boy of 2 could actually do that. I'm amazed. Beautiful.
Fuji's parents, Pius and Lillian Ramey, are professional artists and early child development experts. They say they try to create a suitable environment for the development of Fuji's talents.
We don't really wait for the child to show it. We build the environment and we are expectant because we know that there's something about the child that they begin to demonstrate when they're very young. So the environment that the child comes into is enabling. You understand? Because every family has what they are called to do.
While their 2 older daughters, Honorietta, aged 9, and 7-year-old Onateni, are award-winning youngsters in computer graphics and painting, Fuji's interests is focused on photography. His early start in pursuing his passion is a likely indicator of a bright future ahead for the budding child prodigy. Maria Galang, CCTV.